Eyewitness Frank Kaufman talked more about the cover-up with producer Chet Sapalio.
I said it was probably a very busy place out at the Army Airfield on the night of July 4th, the morning of July 5th. And with all this happening, you had all the media starting to hang out and ask questions. So can you tell us, please, a little bit about how that decision-making process went and what things were like there at the base that night?
Well, after we got most of the craft on and the bodies cleared out of the impact area and onto the base hospital and to Hangar 84, we convened in Colonel Blanchard's conference room to determine how we're going to handle the press, you know. And there was quite a few out there, you know, wanted some answers to them. And well, it's how do you explain something like that, you know? I mean, it's something unheard of, you know, and we didn't know anything about a UFO or a flying disc or anything that was extraterrestrial or what have you, say. So after, well, I think after a couple of hours, we finally came to the conclusion maybe, well, in fact, it was Major Thomas that came up with the idea that maybe if we tell him the truth, say, and take a chance whether they would believe it or not, since this would be something that is bizarre, unheard of, say. So we agreed to that. And it was rather interesting when we went out to the out of the conference room and met the members of the media there. There must have been about maybe 25 or 30, and Thomas started off very nicely, and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "the announcement I have is that we have been invaded from outer space. We have a craft possibly of extraterrestrial origin." When he said that, at the end of that word extraterrestrial, he said, about 2/3 of the group just bust out laughing, you know, and threw up their hands, you know, said, "Oh, the hell with this," you know, and they knew we were going to come up with some cockamamie story, and they just left the room. See. So, but those that were there, there was a small group. They weren't satisfied. They wanted to know something about the extraterrestrial, you know. Thomas says, "Well, I don't know anything. I'm just telling you what it is." He said, "You asked me, and I'm telling you." He said, we haven't actually made a thorough examination of the craft or the bodies, you know, or anything of that nature. He said, "Until such time," he said, "we'll have to leave it as it is." Well, when we went back into the conference room, Blanchard and even Major Easley, the Provost Marshal, and Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer, and the rest of us, by God, the plan worked. Say, you know, the truth, you know, see, you know. So that's the way it did. Because we had no idea, you know, it had nothing to do with what the paper came up. Paper just came up that a flying disc, you know, was captured. And of course, next day, you know, Ramey came out contradicting the flying disc story, you know, and said it was a balloon, see. Well, we knew what a balloon looks like. We know what our planes look like, you know. But a craft of unknown origin is something else.
Back to the crash site. There were 5 bodies.
Yeah.
One was thrown against the arroyo, one was inside, outside. Was the craft lighted? Was there any smell? You know, what can you tell us about the craft itself and the bodies?
The craft itself, I would say, maybe might have been, I don't know, sure, maybe about 20, 25 feet in length, maybe 6 feet in height, possibly about 15 feet maybe in width. There was a metallic smell, you know, around the craft. Inside the craft, it had sort of a kind of bluish, greenish light. See? There was quite a console out in front, and there was a little console in the back of the craft. As I said, I didn't go through the craft with a fine-tooth comb. I didn't spend that much time checking out all the details, say, because, as I said, we had to get that damn thing out of there, you know, and before daylight. And when we got it on the flatbed, say, which we had one hell of a time getting it out of the air because of the mud, you know, sliding all over the place. We put a tarp over it and had part of the craft exposed. See, and we went right down Main Street with it. Well, people looked at it, you know. There again, it was a common sight, you know. They would always see some craft on a flatbed going down Main Street. See, they looked at it as another plane, something like that. See, we didn't want to hide anything. See? And we went in the back entrance of the base, back to Hangar 84, and that's where it was unloaded. Lickety-split. No fanfare, no band, no flag waving or anything of that nature, you know. See, dude, that's the, you know, you could say that's the art of deception, you know. Act yourself, you know. I mean, do everything as natural, you know, what people are accustomed to seeing. See, but if you try to spend time hiding it, they get curious.
Tell me about the aliens. Tell me about the bodies that were found. Were they good-looking people, or were they...
Oh, yeah, they were. They didn't have any of these, you know, slanted eyes or horny fingers, you know, anything like that. They were... I don't know whether you want to call them people or so. I call them people because that's what I'm accustomed to looking at somebody as people, see. They were good-looking people, you know, fine skin. They were kind of ash-colored. That was the color of their skin. Eyes were just a little bit larger than ours, you know, more pronounced. Small nose, a little small mouth, very small ears, see. No hair. Very fine features, very well built. Maybe 5'4", 5'5" in height. That's what I could remember seeing.
Frank, in your personal opinion, what happened here in 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico? What is your bottom line?
That in 1947, I can only put it this way, that a craft of unknown origin crashed north of Roswell. It was recovered with bodies not of this earth, which proved that we are not alone in this vast universe of ours.